on that note, we are going to start with our next panel discussion. I'd like to first introduce what this panel discussion is all about, and then we will introduce our prestigious panelists. Like we've mentioned, the year 2020 was an unprecedented year. Nobody could have seen a pandemic coming, and that pandemic completely changed the way we operate as community managers or as individuals in our regular life. In this panel, we are essentially going to talk about how this pandemic impacted community management from an operational point of view. What are the changes that community managers had to make on an ad hoc basis to continue delivering their responsibility while ensuring the highest safety standards? And in this panel, we have a very global panel here. We have Mr. Johan Kruger, who is the CEO of Association Management Solutions, joining us from South Africa. We have Mr. Chris Dugan, who is the president of Strata Community Associations, NSW, joining us from Australia. We have Mr. Al-Harith Al-Musa, who is the vice chairman of Falcon City of Wonders, joining us from the UAE. And this session will be moderated by none other than Mr. Jeevan de Mello, who is the board member of Community Associations Institute and the CEO of Zenesis Corp UAE. I welcome all you gentlemen. It looks lovely to have this panel from different parts of the world. And before I switch off my video and allow our panelists and our moderator to take over, I have just one quick instruction. If you have anything to share with us, please share it on chat. And if you have questions during the Q&A round, please put them in the Q&A session, and please mention who the question is addressed to. So I hand it over to you, Jeevan, and looking forward to a terrific panel.
Thank you very much, Harsha, and thanks everyone for joining in. So I'm the moderator for this exciting session, and I've got some amazing guests out here. My name is Jeevan de Mello. I'm the board member of the Community Associates Institute, which is in the USA. And of course, we have a local chapter for the Middle East here in Dubai. I'm also the CEO of Zenesis Corp, and we are real estate management consultants, and we do a lot of business transformation services. So today's panel discussion is about how the pandemic has impacted the way of working for community managers. So it is my privilege to introduce quickly our esteemed panelists. We have Mr. Al-Harith Al-Musa, who's the vice chairman of Falcon City of Wonders. It's a beautiful master community here in Dubai. He's a very, very premium real estate developer. So we really want to welcome him here. So if Al-Harith, you want to say a quick hello?
Absolutely. I think today is a historical day for me, because it's the first time in my life I would say good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to the same panelists at the same time, talking about the same topic. It's exciting, and I'm looking forward to this discussion, and thank you for hosting me.
Thank you, Al-Harith. And then we have Johan Kruger, who is the CEO of Association Management Solutions in South Africa. I've known Johan for a long time. We've spent time together in a Community Association Institute in the US. He traveled around the world. So welcome, Johan, if you'd like to say a few words.
Hi, Jeevan and panel. Thank you very much. Thanks for the opportunity. Greetings from a sunny South Africa, and looking forward to this panel discussion. And from my friends all around the world. Looking forward to it. Thank you once again.
Thank you, Johan. And last but definitely not the least, we have Chris Dugan, all the way from down under. I don't know what time it is right now, but he's the president of Strata Community Association in New South Wales in Australia. And we really have a pleasure of having Chris here. And we thank SCA for being also one of the supporting organizations of this great event. So welcome, Chris, if you want to say a few words.
Thank you, Jeevan. Wonderful to be here. And I think it's an incredible reflection on the global collegiate environment that we have, and the fact that we can learn off each other, share stories, and hopefully motivate each other is what we're here for. But from down under, regrettably, it is raining and wet, which is not what you usually hear when people talk of Australia, but we're here and happy to participate.
Thank you very much, Chris. And so we've got a lot of things to discuss today, and we unfortunately don't have that much time, but we're going to ask our audience out there to please, any questions you have, put it in your chat box, and so that we can try to answer those questions to you, for you. So I'm going to start with asking each of you probably the same questions, but we have a chance to have a very casual conversation, so we can talk, we can answer any of these questions as we go about it. So the first question I have, maybe I'm going to start with Chris, because he's the latest time right now. What are the top 3 challenges you have faced during the pandemic in carrying out your responsibility as a community manager?
Excellent question. And I thought I'd break it down into the top themes of challenge that we had, because they're distinctly different. And the first one, which was when we all reacted to the news of a global pandemic, and when we found ourselves, particularly as managers at an association and a practitioner level, dealing with the safety, security and troubleshooting that occurred on the spot, trying to close facilities, mobilise a workforce from home, digitise our workforce as well to be able to deal with clients, and answer a lot of questions where we didn't have a lot of answers. So the red brain problem solving phase initially was full of high energy and high pressure, but I think the management sector responded well. The second part I found the most interesting, which was the innovation, where we knew what we were dealing with, yet we had the opportunity to now start to innovate around new product services, new ways of dealing with our clients, and new ways of obviously relating to our workforces across the country. So that was probably the exciting bit. And now in an Australian context, I find ourselves in the normalised phase, which is probably the most challenging, Jivan, because now everyone has accepted the reality of what we're living. The energy has gone, yet the challenges are still there. And in fact, our customers, which are the clients in our owners' corporations and body corporates across Australia, have come through it now, and all of their normal issues, which they parked while they dealt with the necessity of COVID, have all come back, and they've come back with full force. So I'm finding it a challenge now to motivate our staff to keep going with the same vigour that they had at the start.
Excellent. Thanks so much, Chris. Johan, what are how did you guys, what are the top 3 challenges that you faced in your communities and as community managers?
Thank you, Jivan. I think in the beginning, we were not really prepared for what the full impact will be for, in our case, it was level 5. So for the on-site manager, suddenly he couldn't get to his office. He was not allowed to travel, and he had to, depend on a service provider that, and some community managers live, an hour away from their community. So that was a massive challenge, not to be able to get to the office, not be able to be on site for the on-site managers. The other big challenge that we had is in some of the communities that there was a loss of revenue, where part of the revenue stream, for instance, was billing for construction, and the construction activity stopped. So suddenly, not just a growing debt, but we couldn't bill for certain revenue. So although the levy was secure, it was like the amenities, for instance, construction, golf courses that closed, restaurants that closed. That had a big impact on everybody, and just the movement, because the inter-province travel was banned. So to move between provinces in South Africa was a massive challenge, And then on top of it it was expected of the security and management to enforce government rules. So the government said you can't walk, you must wear a mask when you go outside. But suddenly it became the manager's responsibility, to enforce these kind of additional rules that was not part of the normal, house rules and governance rules. So that time, a year ago, was quite a big challenge. Today, obviously, things have changed. The environment is a bit more relaxed, but those first 2 months, March, April, May, it was tough. It was a nice challenge at the time. Thanks.
Thanks, Johan. Now, as community managers, we face some similar things as well here in Dubai. We've had a lockdown, as many of you know, sometime last year, and it was tough. But the government handled it extremely well. We were well protected. There was a great sense of security. I feel, and Al-Harith will agree with me on that. And even though it was challenging, I believe that it showed us community managers in a very good light, because we were kind of the frontline staff. We were able to deliver a lot of help to our communities, take care of our communities and people. Now, Al Harith is a developer. So from a developer's perspective, Al Harith, what are the three challenges that you faced as a developer?
To add on to what Chris and Johan have mentioned, I believe Johan is absolutely right. No one was ever prepared for such a situation. You would normally think of different situations that would come based on experience and based on day-to-day business. But thinking of a pandemic that's going to be global, that's going to stop commuting from home to work, I think no one was prepared. To come to the 3 points, the first one was moving from office's location to remote working. As you're aware, Jeevan, here in the UAE, in the beginning, we did not have the luxury of access to applications like Zoom and Microsoft Teams. And then having it authorized and available created a shift, not only in the mindset, but changing the norm and getting adapt to it, to train even some of the staff how to use it. It wasn't user-friendly in the beginning. It needed some practice. And I think the two messages that kept on happening in every other meeting was your mic is off or I cannot hear you. And I even had a post-it note, your mic is off, you know. The second part would be, and I would consider it a great challenge, is the client's reluctancy. You know, when you come into the unknown, you start rethinking about all your expenses, all your investments, and start calculating all over again. You start thinking of worst case scenario. Okay, now we're in a pandemic. Is it going to become worse? Shall I stop paying my bank? Is the banking system going to collapse? What's going on? So people were scared, and everyone's scared of the unknown. The lockdowns, they were a tremendous challenge that faced everyone. And the worst that I would think to add on top of all of this was the rumors that were spread out. And I'm sure rumors were spread out in South Africa and Australia, here in Dubai, everywhere else around the world. People would just, I think, Jeevan, you might even remember there was a rumor about supermarkets are going to not have any supplies of medication. Until the government interfered and His Highness Sheikh Mohammed bin Zayed came on TV and said food and medication are not going to get out of stock. Relax.
Right.
The third thing that I personally missed or suffered was the personal touch in the deal closing, reading body language.
Right.
The body says 90% of the message, the communication's only 10%, as you're aware. So losing all that, and some of the people start coming on Zoom and Microsoft Teams while their camera's off. So it really puts you out of your game. Yeah. I think those are the three top challenges that I would say as a developer we faced here in Falcon City.
Thanks, Al Harith. And I living in, of course, both Al Harith and I, we have the proud privilege to live in this beautiful city of Dubai and in this country of the UAE. And yes, we were very blessed that our leadership, the government, really took care of everybody, and it made our lives much easier. So it was challenging, but I think with the support of the government, we were able to do a lot. So I'm going to circle back to Chris about what are the initiatives that you've taken. Now we didn't know these challenges would come about. They came about. Now we know better, right? So at that point of time, what did you do very quickly to surmount these challenges, and what have you learned for the future? Just briefly on that.
So just reflecting on hearing the two counterpart stories from around the world, the commonality of these issues and the unexpectedness of how it hit was singularly, I guess, common across the globe. So all the issues and stories we have, I'm sure, are quite relevant to the entire audience here, Jeevan. But what we saw, certainly in Australia, the mobilisation around tech solutions. So there were two. There was working from home and the unprecedentedness of moving your entire workforces overnight and across multiple jurisdictions was a massive challenge. And I think those businesses and those communities that were well invested in technology solutions clearly were able to move quicker. But what we also saw was the investment in other technologies that have always been moving in the background, but perhaps didn't have the urgency, or perhaps some of the incumbent systems had been holding them back. So the innovation that's occurred and this uprising of invention, I think, is one of the more exciting responses. To Johan's point, we adapted a lot of our billing and a lot of our value propositions because we lost a lot of revenue streams, but we actually found that we had a holistically resilient model because we lost our ability to recover debt recovery and additional services for meetings, but we were able to provide other services. So in a way, it was a bit of a net zero type impact on our businesses, but we had to work very hard to make sure we were adding additional services. And the third, I guess, most key response, and this was probably at my level, was the collegiate collective wisdom and sharing that we had. So I was fortunate to connect with some of my global counterparts who are going to be speaking over the next couple of days, Tom and Pepe and Nigel Glenn from the UK. And we would meet at a time convenient to all of us and just share stories and share information and step each other through what our jurisdictions were doing. But I found that very helpful, and I also found it very comforting because it happened at the peak of lockdown where you were sitting in your home, unsure how to deal with your members and your clients and your staff, and these are thousands and thousands of people. So having that collective wisdom and being able to share those experiences was very productive and very valuable.
Thanks, Chris. No doubt. I mean, you talked about the rise of digital technology. We've been talking about digital transformation for many, many years. And, people didn't pay too much attention. So, yeah, that's all IT stuff. And yeah, we'll do it and stuff like that. But I think in less than 1 year, I read some of the digital transformation has gone 10 times. It's moved 10 times quickly. And in today's paper, I was reading about people, the billionaires, the current billionaires like Jeff Bezos and Chris Zuckerberg and Elon Musk. Their wealth soared due to the pandemic. Just the adoption of digital technology. So there has been some good news for a lot of people with this pandemic. Johan, what are the initiatives that you took there in South Africa to during this pandemic?
Jeevan, you mentioned Elon Musk. We shared the same university. Just a pity that we never kept in touch in RPA. Or we went to the same university. I think for me the biggest thing was flexibility. We had to change, especially, and I'm referring to the on-site management. You used to going to a site, you used to going to an office, you used to having staff around you. You almost like remote management of estates was a big no-no. And I'm talking in the South African context. And suddenly you realize you've got to be flexible. You go to the office, half the staff is there, half the staff is not there. Some work from home, some. So that for me was the big thing, the flexibility, and also, get challenged. I think in South Africa we're probably going to skip the fourth industrial revolution and go straight to number 5. Yes. Because it happened so fast, and that and a little bit around this the let's call it the amenities or the sports clubs or the restaurants. You wake up one morning and your golf course is closed. No golfers, no nothing, and what's the next step? You to start to think, but you don't just close the golf course because you do maintenance on the golf course or it rained too much. It's closed. The grass is growing. It's looking beautiful. So those kind of things, for me, the word flexibility comes up when I think about it, and I think we all adapted, including service providers. You as you know, in South Africa, security very big. So suddenly the security service providers had to learn how to move their staff complement, from various parts, and with a limited public transport, all those kind of things. So for me, flexibility on all fronts. And at the end, I think it's positive. We learned from it, and we'll get to it later. For me, it also accelerated outsourcing, the outsourcing of management in South Africa. I think it's going to force our hand from the estates or the big communities that still holds back want the on-site manager, he must work for the homeowners association, don't like management sharing. I think this whole pandemic has pushed that. But back to your question, flexibility for me. Had to be flexible on all fronts, everybody.
That's a good point, Johan. Just to understand a little bit from our when you say outsourcing, can you just clarify that? And the reason for that is here in Dubai and in the Middle East, we do not outsource in the sense that we manage these. Communities aren't allowed to manage their own properties. They must give it to a community management company from the outside. So when you're saying outsource, you mean there in South Africa, communities employ their own staff. Is that correct? Please clarify.
Jivan, thanks for the question. Yes, you're correct. So, and here for reference, I'm talking about the larger communities. I'm talking about single homes, or what we call freehold. There's either eco estate or a golf course or other amenities that's included in the community. Okay. And in South Africa, we call them a estate manager or community association manager. Right. 9 out of 10 times, he's employed by the homeowners association, right, by the community. So is the rest of the staff. So the admin staff, the security manager, the operations manager, all employed. And that's when I referred to the difficulty for them to move, right. Unlike Dubai. I mean, It was a different world when I arrived there to say everything is outsourced. So I think just to come back, it will, for me, I think it will fast track the outsourcing of management in South Africa.
So I've got quite a few questions already. I know we've kept the questions for the end, but I'm going to ask one of the questions that have already popped up, and maybe I'm going to ask Al-Harith that because I know that he's got his vast community that he and his team manages. And the question from one of the audiences: how were people reacting to the swimming pools being closed and amenities being closed? Were people accepting of it, or were they grumbling? Did they ask for their service charges back? So that's a question from the audience. Maybe Al-Harith, if you'd like to answer that.
Sure. In this situation, as we mentioned earlier, it was something new for everyone. So what was more important than taking the service charges back or closing the swimming pool was to handle the actual first few COVID situations in the community, right, and that type of transparency. And I remember I went to our chairman and I told him that we have the first case of COVID situation in the community. What should we do? And we started asking the authorities, and there was no clear guideline about what should be done. He said, do we have any precedent for this situation? I said, no, we do not. And then I asked him, what would you do if you were living in a community and the community manager did not inform you that there is a live COVID situation in your neighbor's house? He said, I'd get furious. So from there, he said, we should have a circular out to the community and explain to them what's happening, and explain to them that everything is being controlled, and explain to them what needs to be done. Because today it might be 1, tomorrow 2, maybe in the next few weeks, the numbers are going to rise. We do not know. So what's important right now is that we do not lose our reputation. We do not lose our transparency. We do not lose the connection with the residents. So I think in these type of situations, transparency is very important. And then when it comes to smaller matters like a swimming pool being closed, this could be handled because not a lot of people are really considering the swimming pool situation when there is a pandemic outbreak, and it is actually life-threatening. I think that's what we concentrated on more.
Thank you, Al-Harith. I think that's very important, and Al-Harith is an extremely transparent and caring developer. And if you come to his community and meet some of his residents, you will know exactly what I'm talking about. And I think it's very important that as community managers that we are upfront with our residents. There's no point of pretending that everything is okay when it's not okay. And I believe you, Harith, is that people, and your chairman is absolutely right, because people want to know the truth. even if it means that they have to stop doing certain things, they would respect you if you tell them the truth rather than trying to hide behind any lies or pretending that everything is okay. I think transparency is definitely the need of the hour. Back to you, Al-Harith, what are some of the critical operational changes that have occurred during this COVID situation? And will this continue? Did you make any different changes after that, which you are going to actually continue with?
The first operational challenge obviously was switching to virtual meetings instead of in-person meeting. As I told you, we were all accustomed to all being in the same meeting room and conducting the meeting. And then switching to the virtual meeting, it was tough in the beginning, but later on it smoothed out. And up until now, we still hold a majority of our meetings virtually. It is more convenient. You save a lot of time in commuting from one place to the other, and you can have more time done. The second part is adhering to the social distancing. Not only the government regulations for social distancing, but just to maintain the office space and make sure that even if someone's infected, not the rest of the team are going to get affected by a virus. And that made a lot of the spaces in the offices to be remanaged again to maintain that desks are not close to each other. People are shifted from certain offices to other offices to maintain the social distancing part. And the client after sales services, that was very important for us. Being a developer, after you sell the villa, the client must come over, sign some documents at the handover, the snagging. So all that could not have been done in the beginning, especially when there was a lockdown. So It was a huge challenge. I don't think snagging could be changed to virtual snagging anytime soon, because the people like to touch, feel, and see and experience it by themselves. I believe these are the major operational challenges that we have.
Thanks, Al-Harith. Lots of questions coming in. The next question that's come in is very, very similar to what you just said, Al-Harith. I'm going to ask this to Chris, because I know Chris is probably impacted a lot by this. Is about how did you deal with board meetings and general body meetings, or AGMs or AGAs, as we call it here in Dubai, back down under?
Excellent question. So, and Al-Harith's covered a lot of the consistent issues around Zoom and obviously moving to an online meeting. So the first key challenge we had was legalising online meetings. So we didn't have legislation in our various states that enabled legal meetings to occur in certain fashions without a terribly onerous front-end process of collecting proxies and effectively holding those meetings, with those proxies to vote. So we had to move very quickly with emergency COVID powers in each of our state legislations. And we did that, and we've actually made them in most states permanent now. So we've moved through that, used that as a crucible of invention and actually moved forward. So many of those meetings still continue to be held online. However, we're a very large island, and in most of our states, we've gone several months without locally transmitted cases. So you can see complacency starts to set back in. And in particular, New South Wales, up until yesterday, we had no locally transmitted disease. And then when we did, everyone had to go back into that problem-solving mindset of how do we deal with these issues again, because our client base got very complacent. And they got very accustomed to normality and going back to usual. So it's our job to keep them, educated and aware and sensitive to the fact that they need to be agile to how we deal with those things. But meetings now principally are occurring online, but the same issues that we're finding is it's very difficult to sometimes conduct proper governance when you're dealing with 100, 200, 300 people online, some who are there present in person, some who you can hear in the background on the bus, and trying to deal with significant structural issues. And the context for this as well, Jivan, is that Australia's gone through a construction reform agenda across the last 12 months. So there are very serious issues that need to be dealt with. And sometimes being able to read these people in person and give them that professional advice is much better done sitting around a table as opposed to over Zoom.
Absolutely. What about voting? I mean, do you do everything electronic voting when you vote for resolutions and stuff like that?
We do, and we had a very quick time trying to educate ourselves and backfill with technology solutions. So for many meetings, there were managers with Excel spreadsheets going through and counting votes until we had technology solutions that were integrated in to our voting platforms and our Strata software platform. So we're there now, but it was a painful experience to get there. And the question needs to be asked, why didn't we have this beforehand? But I think, as you touched on, we didn't have that crucible of need that we now have.
Right. Absolutely. In fact, people love Zoom and Teams, but I remind everybody, we had Zoom and Teams for a long time before this pandemic. Mm-hmm. In fact, I remember using Teams quite a lot with my own office, and they were asking me, why should we use Teams? And, it was not so important, and we can just meet and chat and things like that. But with the pandemic, the usage of Zoom and Teams absolutely, as you all know, soared, to the sky. And we are still using Zoom right now when we're talking. But to me, I think it's a great opportunity for us to meet and chat like this. I mean, in a normal situation, if we had a physical conference, I mean, getting Chris to fly from Australia and Johan to fly from Dubai, though I know Johan loves to come to Dubai, and I'm sure we will have a physical conference here sometime in December. But this virtual format allows us to continue the conversation. So Johan, Johan, you want to say something?
No. I just wanted to add there. I mean, it's this whole flexibility and time for change.
Yes.
Many years ago, it was a runner with a stick to bring the message. Then there was the pigeons, and then the ships, and now we can talk. We here. We don't need to fly all over the world. Yes, it's always a privilege to visit you in Dubai, but. Look, I mean, where we are today and all around the world, we can talk and share. It's the fifth industrial revolution.
Yes, it's upon us. And Johan, I'm going to continue with you to ask you, how has the perception of our customers changed now? Do they view us as community managers differently than they viewed us before the COVID pandemic? What is your experience?
Yeah, I think for me, Jivan, we must not forget about what happened a year ago. In South Africa, it's almost to the day. Right. 12 months ago, we went into level lockdown 5. I'm just giving a bit of history. Our government followed, the everybody around the world, but the message was mixed in terms of can you, can't you, walking your dog, in a estate or in a private estate or in outside in the suburbs. And at that time, we, the estate managers, the community managers, became the face and the messenger of government. And that had a very negative impact. And I'm going to say what I'm going to say now is really tongue-in-cheek. My community was the most animal-loving community. They were the fittest community in South Africa. Because when I said to them, you can't walk your dogs, you can't walk, suddenly it was my fault, and suddenly they all would like to walk, and they all had animals. But 12 months later, times have changed. People have changed. They've, the social distancing, the masks, we're quite good with that. I do think there's a positive for the community association manager or the estate manager. We managed to continue. We were still accessible. People would still be able to meet us either in person or in a virtual platform. So I think in that sense it's positive. The negative side though is the negativity that some of the board members and residents felt in their personal lives in terms of their workspace spills over, and unfortunately a lot of estate managers felt the brunt of that, and you know, had to almost be the one that they took their frustrations out of. But I think in general, and listening to my colleagues and my friends all over the world, I think if there's one industry that came out fairly good out of this pandemic, is the community association managers, the associations all over the world, because we adapted, we changed, we were engaging, we were there. It's not like we disappeared. You know, I think long-term positive. I think so. But the first 3 months was tough, huh?
Yeah.
Let's not forget.
Thanks, Johan. And I feel exactly the same way. My experience has been, and I'm going to ask Al-Harith the same question. My experience has been that people have started appreciating us a little more than before, right? Previously, they would only see us as, you know, people sending invoices, collecting service charge payments, and, you know, disappearing for the rest of the year. But people have changed the way they look at us. They look at us as protectors of the community, you know, someone who's going to look after the community, making sure that the community is still well maintained, because regardless of the pandemic, we still have to fix our pools and mow the lawns and, you know, clean our window facade, the facades of our buildings. So nothing really changes for us in that sense. I mean, we continue to work as usual, but with extra protection, right? Making sure that not enough people come into the elevator. You know, we have to have only 4 people or 5 people. Make sure that anybody who was found with a positive case found in the building, we had to inform everybody in the building, just like Al-Harith said earlier. So people, I believe, have looked at us in a little bit different way. We've just got a few minutes more, and I just wanted to ask Al-Harith, what are your key takeaways? And I've got a few questions to ask as well. So Al-Harith, what are your key takeaways from this whole experience as a developer? I mean, what would you change now going forward, that knowing what you know about the pandemic, what would you change as a developer?
I think not only as a developer, but in person. The first one would be never take anything for granted.
Right.
If this taught us something, this taught us that overnight the norm is going to change, and if it wanted to change, it's going to change, and there's nothing that we can do about it except adapt to it. Right. So the second point is we have to adapt fast. If we do not adapt fast, we're going to stay behind, regardless if you're a computer programmer, you're a developer, you're a supplier. You have to adapt to the new norm. Thirdly is, if there is no way to do something, you have to create a way. You cannot give up. Being a developer, being a community manager, there are people that are looking for solutions from you, and it is on you. Just like Johan said when he was as the face of the government in his community, whatever he reflects, people put it on him. But he had to learn how to adapt to the situation, manage the situation in the right way. As you mentioned, and we all mentioned, transparency. Transparency is linked to your reputation. So the best way to protect your reputation is be transparent. Once you lose your transparency, you're going to lose your reputation. Once you lose your reputation, everything that you have built from day one has gone down the drain. So you must not let that happen at whatever cost. You can lose everything, but do not lose your reputation. We're all into this together. If a person thinks that they're going to get through this alone, there's no way. There is an Arabic expression that says, one hand does not clap, you need 2 hands to clap.
Correct.
So my father always tells me, people are for people. So we have to stick in it together, and planning is the key to success. So we have to plan ahead of time. We have to think of contingency plans, and being always sharp and ready for whatever might come our way. These are the key takeaways that I think Corona has taught all of us, not only as managers and businessmen, but even family men and members of the society.
Thank you, Al-Harith. We've got just 2 minutes now. I'm going to go to Chris and ask you the same question. Is there 1 or 2 things that you have learned from this thing that you are change the way that you're going to run your business going forward?
In quick summary, Jivan, one is the resilience of our market. I mean, we always had this perception that we were a very resilient industry. I think that's been proven, but it's also the resilience of our people and the communities that we manage. And to the point of Johan and Al Harith, the opportunity to be a trusted advisor was there because we had vulnerable and we had uncertainty that was rife throughout our communities. So the opportunity to actually grasp that and take it and become a trusted advisor was there. And I think once we went through the experience of realising how we have to deal with these issues and the critical safety issues, I think we positioned ourselves, particularly in Australia, as a professional trusted advisor. And we're launching and leveraging our platform from there to say, okay, we've proven our trust in we forged it in the most dire of circumstances together. And I think hopefully we can use that as a trust platform moving forward. So I'd like to see that we don't waste the time and effort we put into problem solving and gaining that trust for our customers.
Thanks, Chris. Johan, you get the last word before I welcome back Harsha for for closing few words. And there's one more question that I need to ask. Go ahead, Johan.
No, thank you. For me, it's investment in technology, Jivan. I don't think we can invest enough in technology. The changes are here to stay. Working from home, being flexible, all those kind of things. But technology for me is the future. And if there was one thing, beforehand, I would have invested more and educate staff and service providers. Don't forget service providers, how to use technology so we can continue to be all these things that we've just spoken about. Thank you.
Thank you, Johan. So there is one question directed towards me and to Al Harith from one of our audience members in particular. They said, Dubai has never allowed, or the UAE has never promoted the work from home culture. Everybody had to come to work. They had to do their jobs and go home. Anybody working from home was considered as not working. Has this pandemic changed? Will you hire people who will work from home? So question for both you and me, Al Harith.
You want to go first or shall I go first?
For me, well, I'm not a big business like everybody else, but
okay.
Yes, some of my staff, to tell you, 3 of my staff actually currently work from home at this time. They continue to work from home. One of them is because of, medical issues and stuff. But for the couple of other people with me, they have to work because we are on-site people, right? So we can't really work from home. So I would say for me, it will be maybe 25% of people, I would say, work from home, and the rest of the people, I would say, come to the office.
So as we said in the beginning, we have to learn to adapt and then see what works and what doesn't. And we noticed that working from home for some of the jobs are just perfect. And some other jobs, as you have mentioned, they have to be at site. For me personally, since the pandemic till date, I moved my office to an office at home, and I'm managing my duties from here, and it is much smoother. And this has given me also the opportunity to depend more on the team that I have, and they started having a greater trust in themselves, which makes them solve problems as they come up without the dependent of going up the channel to get approvals. They now learn, okay, if they have a problem on the table, first they try to solve it themselves. Second thing with regards to the government here also have noticed that working from home has its advantages, and they have allowed it in a lot of the places. I have been meeting with a lot of government authorities recently, and it's all been on Microsoft Teams and Zoom, and it was much smoother, much easier, much more comfortable, because in reality, it was a discussion, regardless if it was done face-to-face or done over a laptop or a tablet. The same communication and message would be there. They would give us the terms and conditions and regulations, and we'd have to ask questions how to adapt to them or how to implement them.
Right.
And from a business...
I'm sorry, because we've run out of time, I'll have to invite, if you don't mind, I'm going to invite Harsha back. I'm sorry you're not able to take any more questions at this time. I thank you very much, Harsha, coming back in. And I appreciate all the time spent. And we're going to continue having this discussion separately, maybe outside the conference.
Thank you so much. This was such an incredible discussion. Thank you, Mr. Al Harith. Thank you, Mr. Chris. Thank you, Mr. Johan. And I would like you to wait before you exit this panel discussion, because I have a very interesting announcement to make. As the event director of Plan 3 Media, I am so excited about this IRECMIS global event. But what I am even more excited about is that we have decided to get IRECMIS to Dubai on 9th of December, 2021, hopefully in a physical event.
Wow, that's great.
Yes, it's very, very exciting. And we are going to reach out to all our panelists who've been so gracious with their support. And we're going to see how we can bring in an international flavor to the IRECMIS Dubai. And this time, it's not only going to be a conference, but it is also going to be awards within community management. Thank you so much for joining us today from different parts of the world. Thank you for your insights. And yes, we'd like to now welcome our next set of panelists. And we thank you for your time. Thank you so much.